Happy Valentine's Day. It is Saturday, February 14th, 2026. If you're listening to this, maybe you're rushing to buy some last-minute flowers.
Or maybe sitting on a bed of rose petals eating chocolates.
Exactly. But today we're doing something a little different. We're looking past all the Hallmark cards, the red foil wrappers to the actually quite grim reality behind the holiday.
It's just such a huge contrast, isn't it? We think of this day as all about romance and affection, but the origin story is fundamentally about a 3rd century execution.
Right. So our mission today is to unpack the how and the why of Saint Valentine's death. We really want to separate the man, or spoiler alert, maybe the men, from the myth.
And figure out how a beheaded priest becomes the mascot for romance.
Yes. We've got a whole stack of sources here. We've got hagiographies, which are basically these intense saint biographies like the Golden Legend. We've got forensic reports on facial reconstruction and even historical analyses of Roman festivals. Lupercalia, yeah. It's a fascinating stack. And I think what immediately stands out is that the history is just so much messier and, frankly, a lot bloodier than the greeting card version suggests.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's just dive right into the identity crisis. Because when we say Saint Valentine, I think most people picture one specific guy. But our sources suggest it is not that simple. Who are we even talking about?
That is the million-dollar question, really. You have to remember the context of late antiquity. The name Valentinus was incredibly popular.
Okay.
It comes from the Latin word valens, which means strong, worthy, powerful. So asking who is Valentine back in 3rd century Rome is kind of like asking who is Mike in modern-day Chicago.
Right. So you have this sea of strong guys walking around Rome. But church tradition and the historical texts, they do narrow down to 3 main candidates, don't they?
They do. Correct. So candidate number 1 is a priest in Rome.
Okay.
Candidate number 2 is a bishop of Terni, which was known as interamna back then.
Right, interamna.
And candidate 3 is, well, he's a total mystery. A martyr in North Africa that we know almost nothing about, other than he died with some companions.
So we can probably set the mystery man from North Africa aside for now.
I think so, yeah. The main legends don't really stick to him.
But the priest of Rome and the bishop of Terni, This is where the sources get really blurry. I was looking at the dates, the locations, and it honestly feels like history is seeing double.
It really does, and that's a very common theory among historians and hagiographers. They suspect that the priest of Rome and the bishop of Terni might actually be the same person.
The same guy theory. Okay, let's unpack this. Why do they think they're duplicates?
Well, you just look at the data points. Both were said to be martyred during the reign of Emperor Claudius II.
Okay.
Both died around the exact same time, roughly 269 or 270 AD. And crucially, both were reported to be beheaded on the Via Flaminia.
The same road?
The same road leading out of Rome. It's just... It's highly unlikely that 2 prominent religious figures with the same name were beheaded on the same road by the same emperor at the same time.
It just seems more likely that as the story was retold over, centuries, the details just shifted. One guy becomes 2 different legends.
Precisely. It's like a game of telephone played over 300 years. But for our purposes, understanding the execution, the why, and the how are remarkably similar for both figures.
So let's get into that conflict then. Let's get to the why. Why did the emperor want this guy dead? If you ask most people, they'll tell you the story about the marriage ban.
Ah, yes, the classic.
The emperor banned marriage because single men fight better, so Valentine performed secret weddings.
Right, and it's a very romantic narrative. It positions Valentine as this champion of love against a cold bureaucratic state. It's a perfect movie script. But if we look at the actual historical record, that ban likely never happened.
That really surprised me. The whole foundation of the secret wedding story is probably a myth.
It appears so. The sources we have actually suggest that Emperor Claudius II encouraged his soldiers to take women, especially after victories. This idea that he needed celibate soldiers just doesn't hold much water historically.
So Roman soldiers had families. It was normal.
Exactly. That narrative about secret marriages is almost certainly a later embellishment, to make the saint fit the holiday.
Okay, so if he wasn't executed for being a rogue wedding planner, what was the actual crime? The empire didn't just execute people for no reason.
No, the crime was much more fundamental. It was about faith and power. The hagiographies, especially the Golden Legend, they paint a picture of a man arrested for preaching to pagans and converting Romans to Christianity.
So he's an influencer for this new religion.
Right.
And the empire sees that as destabilizing.
Precisely. And this leads us to the specific events that got him killed. It involves a judge named Asterius, and this part of the story is where the saint part really comes into play.
I love this part because the stakes are just so incredibly high. So Valentine is basically under house arrest with this judge, Asterius.
Yes. And Asterius is skeptical. He wants to test this priest. So he issues a challenge. He has an adopted daughter who is blind.
Right.
And Asterius tells Valentine, basically, if your God is real, you should be able to cure her.
Talk about pressure. Cure blindness or I'll know you're a fraud. And the subtext is, if you're a fraud, you're dead.
Extremely high stakes.
Ugh.
But according to the legend Valentine prays, he lays his hands on the girl's face and he restores her sight.
Boom. Miracle performed. And I'm guessing that did not go unnoticed.
Not at all. It was a massive, I guess you'd call it a coup for the Christian faith. The impact was immediate. Asterius wasn't just impressed, he was transformed. He, his family, and his 40 servants all converted on the spot.
40 servants.
40. He was baptized, and he immediately released all the Christian prisoners he was holding.
Wow. And that's the real problem, isn't it? You can't just go around converting high-ranking Roman officials and their entire staff without the emperor noticing. It's not just a religious difference anymore, that's insubordination.
That's it, exactly. This creates a political crisis. Emperor Claudius hears about it, and he is furious. This undermines the state religion, his authority. So the order comes down.
And the order isn't just kill him, it's renounce your faith. It's a loyalty test.
Correct. Valentine was ordered to renounce Christianity and worship the pagan idols. If he bows, he acknowledges the emperor's authority and he lives. If he refuses, he dies.
But of course he refuses. And the sources say he didn't just refuse quietly.
No, he did not. In what you can only call a bold move, he actually tries to convert the emperor instead.
Wow. Talk about reading the room wrong.
Yes.
Or maybe reading it perfectly and just not caring. So that's the why. Now let's get to the how. And fair warning to you listening, this gets a little graphic.
It does. Roman executions were designed to be public spectacles, deterrence. The sentence wasn't just death, it was humiliation and pain.
The sources say he was beaten with clubs first. That seems, I don't know, surprisingly brutal even for Rome.
It was a common prelude, especially for people seen as socially disruptive. It was meant to break the body before the final act, to remove their dignity. After the beating, he was taken out to the Via Flaminia.
Which, again, there's that location connection.
And there, on the side of the road, he was beheaded. A brutal, efficient end.
It's so stark. 1 minute you're performing miracles. The next you're being executed by the side of the road. But the story doesn't end there, because we have to talk about the skull.
Ah, yes.
The skull.
Because if you want a visual that is totally goth for your Valentine's Day, you can actually visit what is believed to be Saint Valentine's skull today.
You can. It's in Rome, at the Basilica of Santa Maria in Cosmedin.
It is quite a sight. I was looking at photos. It's not just a bare skull. It's crowned with flowers. It looks like something out of a very dark, romantic painting.
And there's something really fascinating about how we know what he might have looked like. We have this source about a project by a Brazilian graphic designer, Cicero Moraes. Yes, this is where modern science meets ancient history. They used 3D mapping of that skull to reconstruct his face. How does that even work?
It's forensic approximation. They map the geometry of the bone, then they apply depth markers based on average tissue thickness for a man of that age and ancestry. They build the muscles, the skin, all digitally over the bone.
I've seen the images. It's wild. He looks normal, like a guy you'd see on the bus.
And the visual detail that really strikes me is how they depicted him in the final render. He's wearing priestly robes, but they're dyed red.
Red for Valentine's Day.
Red for martyrdom.
Yeah.
In Christian iconography, red symbolizes the blood of the martyrs. So when you see those red hearts today, there's a much older, much darker symbolism lurking underneath. It's not the red of passion, it's the red of sacrifice.
That is heavy. But speaking of remains, the skull in Rome isn't the only piece of Valentine floating around, is it?
Not even close. Relics were a huge deal. It's like a macabre scavenger hunt. There's a shoulder blade in Prague, there's a vessel with his blood in Dublin, there's even another skull that claims to be his in Poland.
How do you end up with multiple skulls? Is it just fraud?
Well, part of it goes back to that multiple Valentines theory, but there was also this trend, especially in the 19th century, of digging up bodies from Roman catacombs. If they found a martyr but didn't know the name, they might just label it Valentine.
Why?
Because remember, the name means worthy or strong.
So you could have some random ancient Roman guy labeled as Saint Valentine just because he looked worthy.
Exactly. It makes tracking the real Valentine almost impossible. The name just became a catch-all for holy martyr.
Okay, let's pivot to something that always confuses me.
Yeah.
We know him as the patron saint of lovers.
Right.
But when you dig into his patronages, it gets weird. He's the patron saint of beekeepers.
Beekeepers, yes. And frankly, the sources are a bit stumped on this one. It's often described as totally random.
Huh.
The best theory is just that it's linked to the season, springtime, flowers, bees. It's an associative leap.
Okay, I can see that. But what about epilepsy? That feels so specific.
This one is a linguistic accident. It's fascinating. In German, the name Valentines sounds very similar to Valentine, which relates to the falling disease, which is what they used to call epilepsy.
No way. So because his name sounded like falling, he became the guy you pray to for the falling sickness.
That's how medieval patronage often worked. It wasn't always theological. Sometimes it was just a pun. Historically, epilepsy was even called maladie de Saint Valentine.
Wow. And the plague?
That one's more chronological. He lived and died during the plague of Cyprian, which was ravaging Rome at the time. So he just became associated with protection from that kind of suffering.
So we have a guy who protects you from the plague, helps with epilepsy, and looks after bees. But we still need to bust one more myth. The note. From your Valentine.
Ah, yes. The farewell note.
I feel like everyone knows this story. He's about to be beheaded. He writes a note to the girl he cured, Asterius' daughter, and signs it, From your Valentine. The origin of the Valentine card.
It is a beautiful story. It is also completely fabricated.
Oh, don't break my heart here.
I have to follow the evidence. That detail just doesn't appear in the early hagiographies. It shows up much, much later, around the 18th century.
So it was added later.
It was likely added to explain the tradition of sending cards, rather than being the origin of it.
It's a retcon. Retconning history to sell cards.
Exactly.
Okay, one last historical theory. Lupercalia. I always hear that Valentine's Day is just a rebranded pagan festival.
This is a very persistent idea, and Lupercalia was a Roman festival held from February 13th to the 15th, and it was intense.
Intense is a polite word for it. Sacrificing goats and dogs, and then men running around naked whipping women with goat hides.
Yes, to ensure fertility. It was chaotic, bloody, and very, very popular.
So the theory is the church just said, hey, let's make this about a saint instead.
That's the theory. And we know Pope Gelasius I did suppress Lupercalia in the late 5th century. But, and this is key, there is no explicit evidence that he replaced it with Valentine's Day. He just wanted the pagan ritual to stop.
So it might just be a coincidence of the calendar.
It very well could be.
So if the saint wasn't romantic, and the pagan festival wasn't directly turned into the holiday, how on earth did we get the hearts and chocolate? Where's the love?
For that, we have to fast forward about 1,000 years. We have to look at England, and specifically, Geoffrey Chaucer.
The writer. The Canterbury Tales guy.
The very same. In the late 14th century, around 1375, he wrote a poem called The Parliament of Fowls.
Fowls as in birds.
Yes. The poem depicts this scene where birds all gather to choose their mates. And Chaucer includes this specific line, for this was on Saint Valentine's Day, when every fowl comes there to choose his mate.
That's it. That's the smoking gun.
That seems to be the turning point. Before Chaucer, we don't really have records of Valentine's Day being romantic. After Chaucer, we start to see the aristocracy writing letters calling each other Valentine.
But wait, I have to ask. February 14th in England. Is that really when birds mate? It's freezing.
You spotted the flaw. It is generally way too cold in February for birds to be mating in England.
So is Chaucer just bad at ornithology?
Or, and here's a great twist, he might have been referring to a different Saint Valentine. There's a Saint Valentine of Genoa whose feast day is in May.
May. Makes so much more sense for birds and flowers.
It does. But for whatever reason, maybe because the February date was already on the church calendar in England, the romance connection just stuck to the winter saint.
So we are celebrating love in the dead of winter because a medieval poet might have just mixed up his dates.
Essentially, yes, a literary invention that just spiraled into a cultural phenomenon.
That is the ultimate snowball effect.
Yeah.
We went from a beheaded priest who cured blindness and refused pagan idols all the way to a holiday of hearts and chocolates, mostly thanks to a guy who liked bird watching and maybe got the month wrong.
It really highlights how history isn't just about what happened, it's about the stories we tell about what happened. We took a story of martyrdom and faith and just layered centuries of folklore, poetry, and commerce right on top of it.
It's fascinating. And here's a final thought to leave you with. We mentioned the Orthodox Church earlier. They also celebrate Saint Valentine.
They do.
But they celebrate him in July. July 6th for the Roman priest, and July 30th for the Bishop of Ternary.
So here's the question. If we move the holiday to the summer, to align with the Orthodox calendar, or even Chaucer's likely May date, would we lose the excuse to eat comfort chocolate in the dead of winter?
I think the chocolate industry might have something to say about that. We need that boost in February.
I think you're right. We need the warmth. Well, thank you for taking this deep dive with us into the grim, fascinating, and very confusing history of Saint Valentine.
It's a pleasure.
See you next time.